document file that I can then post to YouTube. Okay, so let's try this again. This is welcome to the 2024 Humboldt County Point-in-Time Count Volunteer Training. I'm Robert Ward, Housing and Assistance Coordinator with the Humboldt County Department of Health and Human Services. I'm the coordinator for this year's Point-in-Time Count. So the Point-in-Time Count is the only estimate of all people experiencing homelessness, or at least that meet a particular definition of homelessness on a given night in Humboldt County. We're required to do these counts on the last 10 days of January. Unless we get an exceptions, you might remember we did it in February before, but they'll only let you do it in February, maybe March, because they have a deadline that they're having to meet for a report to Congress, and it takes a long time to certify all of the data that comes in. So these counts help us increase the community understanding of homelessness. Without these counts, people could ask us, how many people do we think are experiencing homelessness at any given time? And without the PIT count, we would have no idea what the answer to that question is. You may be aware that we have street outreach teams that collect data on the people that they encounter, but their mission is not to attempt to estimate the number of people that are out there at any given time. There are just not enough outreach workers for that, not by a long shot. They're really focused on identifying the people with the most severe service needs and enrolling them in a case management program to try and help them access shelter and housing. We also have the homeless management information system, where we collect data on people staying in shelters and transitional housing projects. But the rescue mission, for example, does not use the homeless management information system. That's our largest shelter. So HMIS isn't even giving us really a complete picture of sheltered homelessness, let alone the street homelessness. So this is really it. If we want to know how many people are experiencing homelessness and anything about their characteristics, how old are they? What is the racial makeup? What are the various genders? It's also required in order for us to retain and hopefully increase the amount of funding coming in from state and federal sources. Basically, if you don't do one of these, you're not upholding one of the basic duties of a continuum of care, which is required for federal funding for these homelessness programs. And this is part of a nationwide effort. It happens at least once every 2 years in all communities around the country that get federal funding for homelessness. And it's how you'll hear the feds come up with estimates of, there are 500, 600,000 people experiencing homelessness on a given night nationwide. There are two aspects or components to the point-in-time count: the sheltered count and the unsheltered count. You all are here to help us with the unsheltered count. That's going to happen on the morning of January 23rd. The sheltered count happens through the homeless management information system that I was just talking about. And for those shelter projects that don't participate in that system, we collect surveys. The definition of unsheltered homelessness that we use for the PIT count is individuals and families who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence, including individuals and families with a primary nighttime residence that is a public or private place not designed for or ordinarily used as a regular sleeping accommodation for human beings. This including, by the way, is, I don't know what's happening with my thing there. Including is meant to be exclusive, meaning people have to actually meet all of these criteria. It's not enough that, somebody decided their residence was not adequate. This is what HUD means by inadequate. So what's included? Tents, makeshift shelters, streets and outdoors, vehicles, parks, abandoned buildings, campgrounds, and garages. If somebody is allowing somebody to camp out in their garage, that's considered unsheltered. If meanwhile they are allowed to stay inside the house, whether it's the kitchen, the laundry room, the hallway, those people are not included as homeless. They're not sheltered, they're not unsheltered, they're not homeless. That's at least as far as the definition that we have to use for this count. Doubled up and overcrowding is not included. Clean and sober houses, jail, hospital beds, detox centers, rehab, mental health facilities. Just keep in mind, some people who are institutionalized do meet the HUD Category 1 definition of homelessness. They just can't be included in the count. And it's kind of complicated. Depends on how long they've been there, whether or not they were on the streets or in a shelter before. So difficult thing to collect data on, which is probably why HUD excludes them from the count. We have the following deployment centers and contacts in McKinleyville. Lauren Beeman, folks will be meeting at the center in McKinleyville at 1615 Hartwood Drive. In Arcata, we have Melissa Lazan at the Arcata House Annex. Eureka, it's Jeff Davis meeting at the Eureka Municipal Auditorium. In Fortuna, we have Kimberly Magois with RCAA. And Fortuna will meet at 7 a.m. All the other deployment centers are meeting at 6 a.m. And then in Southern Humboldt, Redwoods Rural Community Supports Office at 76 Bryceland Thorn Road, Redway. Michelle Hernandez is our lead there. Logistics. To the extent practicable, the volunteers will be assigned to teams ahead of the count. Our local leads are going to be in charge of the team assignments. And also, by the way, we do have folks for Rio Dell and in East County. They're not a deployment center, but we are working with them, and Mattole FRC. So volunteers will assemble. So if you have, you want a particular team assignment or you have questions, you can email me. You can also contact your local lead there. Volunteers will assemble at their deployment centers at 6 a.m., except Fortuna, which will go at 7 a.m. The captains will have a sign-in sheet, so we know that you showed up. The captains will make any necessary adjustments to the teams. In my experience, some of the people who register to volunteer for whatever reason don't show up on the morning of the count. So some adjustments are necessary. One team might be assigned to cover 2 zones, for example. Each team should have at least 2 members, at least 1 smartphone, at least 1 vehicle. The incentive bags this year are actual backpacks with some survival supplies inside them. The teams deploy to their zones, begin surveying. Once you've covered your zone, come back to your deployment center, return any unused backpacks, and then you're done. We use there's more than one methodology option that HUD gives us to do these counts. They can be divided up into essentially what I call blitz counts or survey counts. So the blitz method allows us to count people who do not want to be surveyed. If we were to use the survey method, every single person has to answer the initial question, where did you sleep on the night of the count? If they won't answer that question, you can't include them. The big advantage with survey-based counts is you can keep doing the count for up to 7 days following the night of the count. And we did try it that way in 2017, and it was just really difficult to get the volunteers to keep going out there day after day. Really, after day 1, I don't think we got any surveys. So that didn't turn out to be much of an advantage, and the count was much lower than what we saw in 2019. So 2017 we were in around 750 or so, and then 2019 it was up to 1702 was the total. So really massive increase because of the methodology change. I want to strongly encourage you to attempt to survey every single person you encounter that you think might be experiencing unsheltered homelessness. When I've done this myself, this has resulted in me occasionally attempting to survey somebody who was not experiencing homelessness, and they let me know that, and it was a little embarrassing, but just don't worry about it. The people were very nice to me about it. They were just like, no, oh, thanks for doing that, for participating in the count. We really want to get these survey results, because when we just get the observation count, that doesn't tell us anything about the person's race, gender, disability, chronic homelessness status. So we have to extrapolate from the survey results that we do get to the broader population. And it's a non-random survey because we're attempting to survey every single person, which, statistically, that means you really want to get your response rate as high as it can possibly be in order for your results on the characteristics to be statistically valid. HUD says we want at least an 80% response rate. In the past, we haven't gotten anywhere close to that. So just keep that in mind, that, that's why it's really, really important to try to survey the people. That being said, if people are sleeping, we don't want you to wake anyone up. Don't shine flashlights in vehicles, tents, or makeshift shelters to try and find people. Use your best judgment and determine whether it's safe and prudent to approach someone and attempt to survey them. If somebody is visibly, experiencing a mental health crisis, it would be okay not to attempt to survey them. I mean, in fact, I would say that you shouldn't. When you approach someone, please smile and introduce yourself with your first name. State that you're a volunteer with the Humboldt Housing and Homelessness Coalition. I need to correct that. We changed the name in March 2023. It's now the Humboldt Housing and Homelessness Coalition. That you are helping conduct a survey of people experiencing homelessness, and that people who complete the survey, and I need to update this too, we're actually handing out, like I said before, these backpacks. So, pretty, decent backpacks like your kid might take to school, that contain some useful survival and camping items. Okay, so downloading the app. You don't silence my phone here. You go to the Google Play or the Apple App Store. If you're using a county issued iPhone, go to your work apps, open the app, plug in your email address, click register. If anybody has any issues with this, with the app, hit me up. I can help you, I'm sure. So then doing the surveys. If the person is willing to do a survey, then you'll select Unsheltered Homeless Survey 2024. And now I'm actually going to stop. I'm going to stop sharing. Have I been sharing my screen? You all have been seeing my presentation, right? My Zoom is just being weird. Right. To share instead my web browser. All right. So you can do these surveys. Sure. You can do these surveys on your desktop on a computer. I'm already registered here. So I'll click 2024 point in time count, Humboldt County. Also, by the way, this year we're collecting locations on where people are camping in advance of the count. So if you know where one of these locations is, you can click known location survey and kind of, drag your pin around on your map to show where the encampment might be. Click next step. How many people are there? One or whatever it is, and submit survey. Back. Okay. So on the morning of the count, if somebody agrees to be surveyed, you'll select Unsheltered survey. If there's more than one person in the household, select household. If it's a single, select individual. I'll select individual. Drag your, if you allow location services in the app on your phone, and you have cell phone service, then this pin should just drop wherever you happen to be. If not, you can drag it around on your phone. Just use your finger, press it to the phone and kind of slide it around, and you should be able to move the the pin around. The first question is, has the person already been interviewed today for the point in time count? And if you say yes, then you get this text. Thanks, but we only need, one survey per person. So if they say no, then we say, where are you sleeping on the night of the count? I'll say, let's say outdoor encampment. We do not need, well, first I'll say, any of these questions can be skipped. And, if a person is hesitant to answer any question, feel free to volunteer that information, that they don't have to answer all the questions. We ask for name just solely to deduplicate the results. So some people, maybe they want more than one backpack. Maybe they just don't remember that they were already surveyed for whatever reason. So that's why. And if it's just initials, that's fine. That'll also be very helpful for duplicating results. Gender, people can have more than one gender that they identify with, by the way, keep that in mind, select all that apply. Date of birth, we ask in order to, again, to deduplicate. Also because we have to, we do have to report people's age ranges, but if they go ahead and give you the date of birth, then you shouldn't need any of the rest of the stuff here. No, I'm having trouble with this on the computer because my Zoom interface is in the way, but I can just select age range like so. If a person doesn't want to answer the age question or the date of birth, we have these age ranges. If a person doesn't want to answer the age range question, this is the one thing where you really must guess, because we have to know if the person is a child, if they're a youth, or if they're older. Yeah. Then for race, again, select all that apply. If you've done the count before, we're asking the race question a little bit differently this year. HUD has decided that Hispanic / Latina, EO, Latino should be one of the race options instead of being a separate ethnicity category. And we now have Middle Eastern or North African as a new race option. Is this the first time you've been homeless? So here we're talking, when we say homeless, we mean living on, outdoors, in a car, in a shelter, any of the types of places that we include in the count. How long have you been homeless this time? And so we have some options here, 0 to 3 months, 4 to 6. We ask these questions because we're trying to find out if they meet the definition of chronic homelessness, which is a kind of complicated, legalistic thing, which is why these questions are, may seem kind of confusing. If this is the first time the person's been homeless in the past 3 years, then that kind of simplifies the questions that need to get asked, which is why we ask that question. We're not actually trying to find out if this is the first time that the person has been homeless in their entire life. I know the question doesn't spell that out. I guess they're trying to keep it simple. What we really want to know is this the first time you've been homeless in the last 3 years? Because we're only asking this question to try and find out, again, whether or not they're meeting the HUD definition of chronic homelessness, which, if this is the only time the only episode of homelessness in the last 3 years, and then you can just ask the person, well, how long have you been homeless this time? If it's a year or more, then we know that they meet the time requirements for chronic homelessness. The other aspect of chronic homelessness is the head of household has to have a disability. But if it's not the first time they've been homeless, they've had multiple episodes, then the analysis gets more complicated. If they haven't been homeless 12 months cumulative, how many, we need to know if they're meeting the 12 months cumulative over the last 3 years. So if it's 12 to 23, really anything more than 12 here is enough. It doesn't matter if it's 24 to 36 or 12 to 23. We just need to know, is it 12 months cumulative or not? And then how many separate times have you stayed in shelters or on the streets in the past 3 years? This question is worded a little confusingly. This is how it came to us in the software. But what we're looking for here is, how many episodes of homelessness has the person had in the last 3 years? And the key thing to know about that is that episodes of homelessness have to be separated by periods when the person was not homeless. So what does it mean to not be homeless? It means, that could be 7 nights staying in a motel room. Maybe you saved up some money, got a motel room for a week. That's considered a break. Couch surfing for 7 consecutive nights, or being institutionalized for 90 days or more is a break. All of that I know is super complicated and not something you all have to remember to do these surveys. You can just ask the questions and just put down what the person says. But if anybody wants to know, why are we asking these questions? What does it all really mean? How do we use it? That's why I'm explaining. I hope that wasn't too much detail for you.
Robert, there's a question about, there are a few questions in the chat. One is, what if you're in a location that doesn't have cell internet service? Do you have a paper survey? And I think you can work offline in the app. Is that true?
Yes, the app can be used offline. If we have any volunteers that can't use a mobile device to collect the data, I would strongly encourage the local captains to assign those folks to be part of a team that has somebody that can use a mobile device. These surveys, when you try to do them on paper, it looks simple online, but it gets complicated when there's multiple household members, and like the form has to be designed to account for that. So I've never seen a paper form that I really loved that got everything that we needed. So I would just say, and if you do paper, then you have to have somebody go and actually plug it into the app for us. So really want to avoid any paper surveys. And yeah, this can be used. The app works offline, and anywhere that you're doing a survey and you don't have cell phone service, just hit save draft. And then when you get back to a spot where you do have cell phone service or Wi-Fi, you can upload your drafts. And I'll actually save the draft and show you how we do that. All right. How long in months have you been in this community? This is hopefully going to allow us to say, well, people want to know, are people who are experiencing homelessness here, were they living in housing here before they became homeless, or were they living somewhere else and then they moved here? So these questions allow us to get at that. It's not a data element that's required by HUD, just something that we've been collecting for a while now. And do you remember the address of the place you were living before you became homeless this time? Again, not required by HUD, but this will give us some data on, where people were living when they became homeless this time. The next we have some instructions here that pop up in the app. The next set of questions asks about sensitive topics. You don't have to answer any question that you don't want to, but your feedback will help us improve services in the community. That disclaimer kind of actually goes for all of the questions. I mean, all of these are kind of sensitive, but we just specify that because these are particularly sensitive. Do you have a substance use disorder? Do you have a chronic health condition? Do you have a mental health disorder? Do you have a physical disability, developmental disability? Do you have AIDS or an HIV related illness? Do you receive disability benefits? If a person says yes to any of these questions, and here, by the way, we're with disability benefits, I'm not talking about state disability insurance. We're talking about SSI, SSDI, and full VA benefits. But if the answer to, you'll be surprised. Some people say yes to this question and then they say no to all of the rest. But Like we know if they're getting SSI, SSDI, or full VA benefits, they meet the disability definition, which is important for the chronic homelessness. But we also report on things like, oh, this percentage of the unsheltered population reported that they have a substance use disorder. This miracle messages question is, I need to do some work with the vendor to fix this. I think we either need to remove this or fix it, because if you select yes to this question, it's going to tell you to complete the reunification survey, but I don't have a reunification survey. So I can't edit this question, but then it's just going to say like not applicable. So this will get fixed before the count though. So it's either going to be, we'll ask this question and then we'll have a reunification survey, or most likely we're just going to take it out. And then please thank the person for their time. This is the point where you hand them the backpack. Did I see somebody had their hand up? Or any questions I haven't gotten to?
Yeah, Robert, that was me. I had a question going back to the beginning. So if we encounter someone who would like to participate in the survey, but since since they've been homeless, they maybe don't use their real name or they have an alias, is that something that we can record? How does that change things?
Yeah, you could record that. We're just asking for this in order to deduplicate. So if somebody wants to give us their nickname, that would still be helpful for deduplication, as long as they give the same nickname to any other surveyors that happen to survey them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And also just keep in mind, you can skip literally all of these questions. Now, sometimes I worry that when I've given that advice, people have really taken it and run with it. And they've been like, oh, I can skip all the questions. No, please ask each question of the individual and have them skip the individual questions one by one. Don't just, don't just answer the age question and then call it a day, please. Because, then it's that whole statistical reliability problem that I talked about with the extrapolating, and, people are looking at this stuff like race, what's the percentage of people experiencing homelessness who are of this race? What's the percentage of people that got into a housing project that are of this race? Is there some kind of discrimination that's happening that's causing a disparity? These are the data that we use, for those sorts of analyses, which are like really important questions. But if we skip the race question when we're collecting the data, then, that's kind of hurting the overall integrity. So of the data set. So really, please ask each individual question. And the only one you want to guess at the answer to, if they won't answer it, is the age question. Oric meetup place. Let's see. I will. I don't know. Who is there?
Robert,
Anybody else here from Oric except for the person asking the question? There's probably only one team in Oric, and I can see who you are because you wrote a note when you registered that you wanted to do Oric, and thank you so much for that. So we're going to have, similar to what we're doing in East County, in Rio Dell, Scotia, and at the Mattole Family Resource Center, we're going to figure out who the Oric team is, and it's probably only one or two of you up there, and deliver the incentives to you ahead of time so you and your teammate can figure out where you want to meet up.
Robert, Alyssa from Arcata House has a question. She's got her hand raised.
Mm-hmm.
Alyssa. Alyssa.
Yeah, thank you. I was gonna ask for the counting their gender, if you cannot identify what they are and they're bundled up, do you put client doesn't know or client doesn't want to answer?
Um, uh, let's see. I mean, if, first of all, never attempt to guess at the gender. And yeah, so you would just say, prefers not to answer.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. That's all.
I need to tweak the, unsheltered observation survey, by the way, because it is currently asking people to kind of take a guess at race and gender, and we actually don't want to do that. Okay, so if a person, well, yes, I want to go back. Keep in mind, if it's a household, you'll select household. A household, by the way, is any group of people that wants to live together in housing, should the opportunity arise. They would all want to live together as a family, meaning, when let's say they're in some kind of program where the household rent is based on household income, we would take all of their income together. So it's not a roommate situation, it's a family situation, right? But they don't have to be related at all. They could just be good friends who want to live together as like a family. That's fine. So we'll say, whatever the number of people in the household is. Same thing, ask you to record the location. Have you been interviewed? Well, anyway, the point is, make sure that you interview the head of household first. Then once you get through your survey, if you either save draft or you submit it, then it'll just pop up with a whole, a fresh survey. Do that survey on the other household members. If somebody reports, that they're part of a family that was unsheltered, but their other household members aren't with them when they're doing the survey, it's okay to go ahead and, collect survey results on their other family members.
Well, Can I
mhm.
interrupt? So
Yeah.
you're saying you can accept surveys on other family members, so that would be for people, or I mean, for children that happen to be going to school or on their way to school. But we wouldn't would we be necessarily interviewing children under a certain age we wouldn't be able to do that without parent consent?
No, you can. Um, we almost never find any unsheltered children during
Yeah.
the count, but there could be, for example, you could come across an unaccompanied minor, and if we don't survey them, there's no way to get that data. So yeah, you can survey people without parental consent. I haven't seen any guidance from HUD or anybody else that says we can't.
Okay.
It would be weird to have a child who is accompanied by their parent, but the parent is not with them when you are surveying them. But I guess it's possible.
Or if the child's headed to school,
Yeah.
we wouldn't necessarily be interviewing them, but we'd still add them to our count.
I suppose you would. I mean, it would just be hard. It'd be hard to identify them, right? I'm just trying to figure out how this would work. You can't look at a child on the way to school and be like, oh, that's an unsheltered child.
Yeah. Well, and I
Probably.
guess I'm speaking of a very small rural area where I
Yes.
know
Okay.
who the unsheltered children
You-
are.
You and I should talk offline because I'm looking at
Okay.
your picture and realizing who you are. So
Okay, sounds
yeah,
good.
it's like I'm reminded of a quote from, I think, Oliver Wendell Holmes, of like, bad cases, or hard cases make bad law, because
Yeah.
yeah, the Mattole FRC is sort of a special situation.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have you already? Okay. Don't need to do anything else here. Yes. Go back. All right. So, if people, you know, or are not willing to be surveyed, then you're going to go ahead and do an unsheltered person observation tally. So you just select that in your app. Same deal with the location. You're going to select the reason that the person is, the reason you're doing an observation instead of completing a full survey. You must estimate the age. And then these questions I'm going to get taken out because actually I don't even, you know, if somebody does plug in any data here, we're not going to use it for anything, but I just want to take it out, which I will do before Tuesday. Unless I can't get a hold of the software vendor. They're selling the software to communities all over the country, and they seem to have had a lot of success, and it's kind of hard for them to get them to respond to my emails sometimes. They seem understaffed this year compared to previous years. So sheltered person survey, you all won't be working on that. And then the vehicle/structure observation tally. Gonna go back to this, my slide deck. I think I've covered all of this. I need to correct this in the slide deck. We're only asking the disability questions if the person is at least 18, not 13. The disability questions actually won't even pop up in the app until you've selected the person's age. And if you select, I just tested this out. So if you select 13 to 17, you won't get the disability questions. But HUD just doesn't ask us to report any data on disability for kids. And then saving drafts and submitting surveys, I covered that. I covered households. Okay, so the vehicle/structure observation tally. If you encounter a vehicle, tent, or makeshift shelter that looks like it's being used as somebody's primary nighttime residence, but you're unable to determine whether or not anyone is inside, please select the vehicle/structure observation tally in the app. And let's take a look at what that looks like. Select your location. What type of structure is this? I'll say tent. Please indicate whether or not the vehicle or structure appears to be actively being used or if it appears abandoned. If somebody selects appears abandoned or you're not sure, we're not going to use the result in the count. So, you know, if something looks abandoned, don't even worry about recording the survey because I'm just going to have to back it out of the data. But if you select appears active, please enter any additional notes and you're done if it's a tent. If, on the other hand, it's an RV, or if it's any kind of car, boats I think have license plates too. Anyway, if it's a car, a van, or an RV, we want the last 4 digits of the license plate. And also if it's an RV, just a few more questions, because I guess the idea here is that an RV, not all people who reside in an RV are experiencing homelessness, right? Some people are just on vacation, but if the RV meets any of these criteria, we're going to go ahead and include it, except this one. But so if an RV is in disrepair, if the occupants do not have access to sewer, water, electricity, or if it's parked, this is really the big one for me. Any RV that's parked somewhere where you're not allowed to live in an RV and it looks like it's being used as housing, you know, that qualifies as an RV that we're going to include in our results. So I'll just save draft. Okay. John, question?
We have a lot of RVs in our neighborhood that are parked on the curb. That qualifies as not in a bona fide location.
Yeah, as long as you believe somebody is using that as their residence. Yeah, it's not, if anyone doesn't know, it's not legal to just live in an RV on the public streets. So that's why we're calling it, it counts as unsheltered. Let's see. Are there other questions I've missed? With the Wichipec area? Yes, so I'm gonna be in touch with the folks that are signed up for the East County, and we're gonna deliver the supplies to you ahead of time, because we don't want to, make the folks in Wichipec drive down to Hoopa. We're gonna deliver those to you, so you can just head out morning of. Okay. Maggie, you found the app, I take it? Okay. We have some tips and tricks for figuring out whether or not a vehicle is being used as a residence. Signs of potential habitation include fogged, partially open or blocked windows, electrical connections or generators, screens or window coverings. Particularly if the screen or the window is left open. If you've ever slept in a car overnight, it gets kind of muggy in there, so you often will crack the windows. And then, obviously signs, that people are inside the vehicle talking and the vehicle's filled with stuff. Or there's stuff that's, outside of the vehicle. That's usually a pretty good sign. Let's see. Maps. So we've divided the county up into zones. This is an example of the zones that we've created in Eureka. So each team gets assigned to one zone. We are making an effort to assign some of the people that are, professional outreach workers or who otherwise work in homelessness services, as well as people, who have lived experience of homelessness. We're trying to assign them to the zones that we think are more heavily populated. So especially the entire Eureka Bayfront. So that there would be at least one professional outreach worker assigned to each of these zones. Tips for covering the maps. So we want each team to drive or walk down every street, but do not enter private property. And so you can imagine how that would go. If I'm assigned to this zone, I'm going to say, okay, well, we'll start maybe right here. Which street is that? On C Street. We're going to go up C Street and we're going to go back around. Maybe we'll look down all these side streets as we go, and then we'll just go back and forth, up and down through the neighborhood till we've covered all the spots. But your team, it's up to you all to figure out what the best route is to take around your zone. We're going to hand out either paper, or some pit count captains may have laminated maps. I think Arcata in particular is laminating their maps. So there you might want to bring a Sharpie to mark an X on your paper. But other places, I'm pretty sure, are all just doing printed maps. So you'll just mark that off as you go along your route, so you don't cover any area twice. And some teams will be assigned to cover some areas where you're probably not going to see anyone or anything to count. And it's just know that you're still helping us out with the count. Like, for example, I don't know, there's some parts of Eureka that probably don't have many or even any folks in them in McKinleyville. Okay, safety guidelines. Please be safe. Don't take any unnecessary risks. Keep the teams together. Be respectful of the people that you're counting. Call your local lead or me if you have any problems or a question. Dial 911 if you have a true emergency. Please do not take any photos of people experiencing homelessness during the count, or photos of encampments or trash. the purpose of the count is to, try and collect data, and taking pictures of people makes some people uncomfortable. So we really want no volunteers doing that. And then keep any information that you learn about people during the count to yourself. Once you plug it into the app, just forget about it. Don't talk about it. How to prepare for count day. Please wear comfortable shoes and clothes, dress for the weather. I hope folks have rain gear. Please, we are asking whether or not people have a car that they can use on the morning of the count. We're asking whether or not they're comfortable allowing other people to ride with them, so the local captains can see your survey, answers, and can assign the teams accordingly, so that each team has a car. And make sure to charge your cell phone, plug it in overnight. If you want to use an iPad or something, that's fine. Just know, you probably have to save your drafts and submit them unless you have the cellular connection on the tablet. Don't bring a backpack. This time our incentives are just they're too bulky to fit in a backpack, because they are backpacks themselves. So the backpacks are just going to go into your whatever vehicle you're taking for the count. And you'll pass out the stuff from the vehicles. Hand sanitizer, I included that when, we were in the depths of the pandemic, but never hurts to bring hand sanitizer. And we will go rain or shine. Please get plenty of rest. And if you have any questions about anything related to this, you've got my email and my cell phone number. And that completes the training. One thing I usually talk about, I don't know that I covered it, is, why do we do the count on the last 10 days of January? People usually ask me about that. They're like, that's the worst time to do a count in Humboldt County. It's cold, it's rainy, and we have anecdotal evidence that some people travel down south for the winter and come back in the summer. The problem is HUD mandates that, I did talk about this, but I think it was when my mic was not working. HUD mandates that we do the count in January because they're counting on the bad weather to drive people into shelters. And people in the shelter facilities are just much, much easier to count than people who are out camping in the woods. Unfortunately, that doesn't work that well in Humboldt County, because we don't have adequate shelter beds. If everybody wanted a shelter bed, there's just not enough, not by a long shot. And the shelters are, mostly concentrated in around the Humboldt Bay area. Be glad we aren't doing this back east. That is true, right? In Boston, or many places, you'd be out doing this in the snow. But those places tend to have very small unsheltered populations, at least in January, like New York, city of New York, has maybe an unsheltered population of 3,000 or so. So about twice of what we have in Humboldt, which is just kind of unimaginable considering what a massive city that is. But they also have a right to shelter. The only place in the country where, single adults have a right to shelter. But Boston, doesn't have a right to shelter for single adults, and they just have decided to have adequate shelter. So for the most part, if people want a shelter bed in Boston, they can get one. But that's not true anywhere in California. Any other questions before we
Robert,
close here? Yeah.
what's the like average amount of time it takes to do a route?
It's pretty variable, because it depends on how many people you find in your zone and how many of those people are willing to be surveyed. But that being said, some zones are much more highly concentrated than others. So the Eureka Bayfront will take longer than interior and definitely longer than like southern, or south eastern Eureka. When will we know what location we are going to be assigned to? So for those questions, the local leads are handling the team assignments. So they may not have plans to let everybody know. I'm not sure. Do we have any local leads on the call today? I know volunteers like to know what zone they're going to be assigned to, but just keep in mind that some people don't show up on the morning of, and we have to make make team swaps on the fly on the morning of because of that. So we can't really be totally sure what zone you're going to be assigned to until we know who shows up on the morning of. But back to the question, most teams are going to be done within 2 hours. Vast majority of teams are going to be done by 9 a.m. Very few teams will be out later than that. And those teams, I think, are mostly, if not entirely, going to be in Southern Humboldt and the Mattole. HUD really wants these counts to happen at night. They actually kind of expect us to be done with the blitz count around dawn, because they're worried that, if you go out in a major city and you just start counting anybody who's walking down the sidewalk who looks like they might be, experiencing poverty or something, that's not a sound way to do the count. So, but we're kind of, we push the limits a little bit with the time when we do the count, but we try not to push it too much. But anyway, HUD has been very specific that in extremely rural areas where you're not likely to see people just walking around who aren't homeless, then it's okay to go as late as noon. So Southern Humboldt folks, I was just down there doing an in-person training, so I don't think any of them are here. But yeah, Southern Humboldt may be out later. Other than that, I think everybody will be done by 9, if not
Thanks,
sooner.
Robert. Is there a contingent that's going to be covering the dunes out in Manila, Samoa?
Yes. Melissa Lazan is
Okay,
our lead. We have the dunes as part of the Arcata zone.
okay, thanks.
Mhm.
And if you're saying that some people are going to be reassigned, maybe even as late as the morning of, if there's not enough coverage, when do people get information about where they should show up? Like if I'm going to be going to Arcata or Eureka, for example.
Well, we covered that in this training, right? Let me pull up my slides.
You might have, I missed it.
Okay. Well, it bears repeating then. You can't be the only one. So here's our slide with our volunteer deployment centers and contacts. Center in McKinleyville, Arcata House Annex. Now the location you report to is the one that you signed up for.
Oh,
which,
okay.
Now, unless you're told to go somewhere else. So if you are told to go somewhere else, you're going to get an email about it. We're not going to assign you to some other deployment center without having a conversation with you.
Thank you. I
Mhm.
forgot. It's been a while since I signed up and I couldn't remember how we know which one we're supposed to go to. But I know somebody else asked that too. So thank you.
Yeah, if you don't remember which zone you signed up for, definitely shoot me an email and I can tell you.
Actually, I have a question,
Mhm.
because when I signed up, I said, oh, I'll go anywhere. I'll go
Mm.
here, Eureka, Arcata, South. I said I would go anywhere. So I assume they're just going to give me where I live in Eureka. But but I don't remember them saying a specific spot. They just asked where I'd be willing to go.
Hmm.
Yeah, somebody
Um,
else said that too.
Let's see if I can see what's going on, if you all don't mind. I'm going to stop the recording, I think.